feeling? Good. Relaxed? Warmer, hopefully, slightly warmer? Okay, cool. So we are going to begin. Typically, if you haven't come to one of these talks before, we'll start with just general characteristics of the sign that we're looking at, in this case, Sagittarius. Then we'll move into, what should everyone be focusing on in the next 30 days of this season? Even if you don't have Sagittarian energy in your personal astrology chart, that energy is all around us in the environment right now. So we'll be looking at what should we focus on there. Then we'll talk a little bit about breath work, yoga work, other practices that we could be doing in a healing sense at this time. And then we'll circle back to any major astrological things that are coming up at this time, and the new moon and the full moon. So it sounds like a lot, but it's really not that much. So starting with Sagittarius, since we do have a Sag here, we'll see if this rings true for her. A lot of things to say about Sagittarius, as there are about every sign. So I'm going to kind of start with the Sagittarius is ruled by the planet Jupiter, so it has a lot of Jupiterian qualities, if you're familiar with any of those. What I love about this is that Sagittarians tend to be very optimistic. They tend to be kind of happy-go-lucky in certain ways. They love to have a good time. They tend to be pretty social. They can be very jovial when they're in a good mood. They love humor also. One thing Sagittarians need to be careful of, though, is sometimes their humor can be very blunt, and just their speech in general can be very direct and blunt. And so while other people really appreciate that, sometimes people are a little sensitive to those things. So it's something that they have to watch out for. It's a balance. But in addition to that, there's this connection of Sagittarians with the outdoors. Like, they love nature and going out and getting lost in it, exploring new terrain. All those kinds of things are typically very exciting to Sagittarians. And also the idea of learning. Sag and Jupiter both connect to higher education, to philosophy. So it's kind of the idea of anything that helps you to learn, to grow, to expand your mind, your worldview, your viewpoint. All that stuff is very Sagittarian. It's something that they like to usually incorporate into their lives at different points. So there's that set of influences. The next set of influences that comes to mind when I think of Sagittarius is the idea of belief and of faith, actually. But this can be taken a lot of different ways, and we know, depending on all the other influences that might be in someone's chart, would determine whether this faith would play out in more of a structured, like a religious sense, or sometimes it can play out just when we think of that vein of optimism as like faith in life, faith in oneself, just kind of having this sense that, like, yeah, I'm a little stressed, but also everything's totally going to work out, and that's something that Virgos don't have, so we're always a little jealous of that. But yes, definitely faith-filled is something that comes to mind for Sag. Also, developing their own personal philosophy. Sagittarius is very much about, like, going out into the world and experiencing it for themselves. And through their experiences, they kind of come to this idea of, what is my view of the world? What's my personal philosophy for not just what I believe, but also the way that I want to live, the way that I think is right to live. And another key word with Sagittarius is truth. So truth-seeking, truth-telling, also connected with the blunt aspect of things sometimes. So what's interesting about this, though, is that, we can see every sign has a high road and a low road, right? Like I call it. So when Sagittarius is mature, we have this idea of, using our experiences and using that wisdom to kind of teach and serve others and to help people learn and grow through the experiences that we've had. Sometimes the lower road of that is not being able to see outside of our own perspective. Sometimes Sagittarius can get a little stuck in, like, well, this is what I've experienced, so this is what's true, and forgetting, though, that what's true for me individually is not necessarily true for you, etc. So kind of trying to, with that Sag energy, come into the balance of how can I use my experiences and the wisdom that I've accrued to help teach and guide others, instead of kind of closing myself off into one specific perspective, if that makes sense. The other thing too, Sagittarians, what's so interesting is that they're so fun and free, but sometimes in the low road too, they can become a little bit of a zealot. Like some rather famous religious zealots type people tend to be Sagittarians or have heavy Sagittarius influence in their chart, which I think is interesting. But also, Sagittarius is a fire sign. So coming back to that idea of the element of fire being about energy, being about impetus, starting new things, fire is also about competition. So typically these people really like to engage in competitive pastimes, or maybe they played sports in grade school or high school, or maybe they play intramurals now. These people typically like to be active and moving their bodies. They can be pretty quick-witted, also quick in their physical body. When they get riled up, Sagittarians can definitely have a temper. I would say it's maybe not as obvious as the temper that like an Aries person might have, but it's definitely there once you get them going. But also coming back to that idea of they typically tend to be more extroverted. They love a good social setting, love a good party. Sag, though, energy can definitely overdo it a little bit. So it's like, oh, all the friends, all the fun, all the food, all the alcohol, all those types of things. So we're going to talk about something a little later on where during Sag season, it's a great time to work on your liver a little bit. So we'll circle back to that. But some other key things about Sagittarian people, Sagittarian energy, because it is this like fiery starter, self-starter, go-getter, they typically tend to be extremely independent as well. Even though they love friendships, they love to be in intimate relationships and partnerships, it's not that they don't want that, it's that within those confines, they have to feel like they have the freedom to be themselves, to explore the things that interest them, because if not, then a Sagittarius is going to be walking away from that one for sure. So independence is huge. Feeling like they have personal freedom in all different situations is important as well. What can be interesting is in a work sense for Sagittarius people. Sometimes it can be hard to follow the structure or the hierarchy in a work type environment because the Sag is like, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm just gonna like do my own thing because I know that this is gonna work, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes it can be a little bit of a balance for them, working with that, with colleagues, with bosses, with whatever they have in their work environment. One interesting thing too about Sagittarians is that it's probably more typical of male Sagittarius, but sometimes female too. They can tend to settle down a little bit later in life because they're just like having so much fun going out and exploring the world and getting lost and doing all the fun, cool, athletic things that they want to do. So sometimes it can take them a little longer to get to that point to feel like, okay, I'm ready to really settle into this, whatever this is for them. So I think that's interesting too. So all those influences kind of connect to that fiery sign of Sagittarius. But even if you don't have Sagittarius in your chart, over the next 30 days, we want to take a look at all of these themes and how we can kind of connect to and utilize those in our lives. So first of which, we talked about on the physical level, it's definitely time to do some type of liver cleanse protocol, whatever works for you. So that can look a lot of different ways, one of which can be using tea. So dandelion is a great herb for detoxing the liver, and I really love the Yogi Detox Tea. They have this flavor, they have one or two other flavors as well. So it can be something simple like that. Maybe you have a couple cups of tea in a week, just kind of cleanse things out. It can be cutting out alcohol, maybe around the holidays instead of all the way through. Sugar, fatty foods, all that stuff. Just kind of watching our intake as we move into this holiday season. It's really no surprise too that with Sag's like fun, optimistic, joyful outlook, that is the holiday season of late November and December. I'm like, not a coincidence there. But yes, definitely something. There's also a lot of different supplements you can take if you're really going to go a little more deeply into some type of liver cleanse. But of course, I always advise check with a healthcare practitioner or whatever if you're going to do anything that's a little more extreme than just kind of eating healthy and drinking tea. It would be good to check with them. But definitely could be a good time to work on our livers right now since that organ is connected to the sign of Sagittarius. Additionally, I think it's a really great time to review our beliefs. It's such a busy time of year and a fun time. There's all kinds of holiday parties and, gift giving and exchanges and things going on. But in the quiet times that we have, since it is getting darker much earlier in the evenings and sometimes the night seems like it goes on forever, it can be a good time to reflect on, what is it that we individually believe in, whether it is a structured religion, whether it's something a little bit more ethereal or more spiritual or less well-defined. What is your personal truth? That's a great journal prompt for this time of year. And then I want you to think about why are those your beliefs? Why is that your truth? Is it because someone has passed that down to you? Or is that something that you've come to through your own life experiences, through the ups and downs that you've had? And it just would be interesting, I think, for each of us to be reflecting on that at this time. And then also knowing that our beliefs ebb and flow, they change throughout our lives. So if you find that in your reflections, something that really used to resonate with you doesn't resonate with you anymore, don't be afraid to kind of let that go. Know that you are a growing living being and it's okay to make changes as we evolve and as we learn and as we continue to grow. So yes, reviewing that, working with that journal prompt, what is my personal truth? I would actually recommend doing that once a week for all 4 weeks of this season. And I would just be curious to see, as you come back to those 4 entries, does it stay the same? Does something change and evolve? What patterns do you notice when you go back and look at those? So what is my personal truth? This is also an excellent time, because Sag rules higher education, to enroll in any type of course, whether that's some type of formal schooling, whether it's just signing up for a workshop, a webinar series, kind of increasing your skills in some area or another. Even if you're not actively involved in that type of learning at this moment, maybe it's a good time to think about signing up for something or do some research as we move into 2020. Is there something you've been wanting to do? Maybe this is a good time to look more into that. Also, with Sag being very extroverted and fun, it can also be a great time to go to like a networking event or a meetup group or something like that. Sag loves also just kind of getting outside their box. They want to explore and see what all else is out there, and they're very intrigued by things. So it could be a great time to meet people who are new, who are different from yourself in some way, just exposing yourself to new perspectives. Additionally, get outside. I know it's an awkward time, like it's not really hiking season anymore, and it's not quite, if you're a skier or snowboarder, it's not quite that season either. However, when we think about education and teaching and wisdom, I think nature can be one of our greatest teachers. So when you allow yourself to get out and spend time outside, what is it that you learn? And I bet it's something new each time, however large or subtle that might be. So definitely making time for that. And then I think also, Sagittarius season is a great time to travel, and some of us might already be doing that just coincidentally because it's the holiday season. However, if you're not traveling for the holidays and it's not feasible really for you to leave the city during this month, we can do little things within our own environments to still broaden our minds. So that could be picking up like some cool new books from the library. Maybe it's even a travel book, planning for a future trip. Maybe it is exploring a new neighborhood in Denver that you really don't spend that much time in. Maybe it's something as simple as, trying out a new type of international cuisine. Is there a restaurant in your neighborhood that you've been wanting to go to that you haven't been to yet? And it would be something a little different that would give you a new perspective. Those are all really great exploratory things to be doing over the course of the next 30 days as well. All right. Any questions on that? No? I feel like we're so quiet tonight, but it is like a weird, slow, dark day. I get it. All right, so to add on to that, before we talk about the upcoming events, we know Sagittarius rules the liver. I'm like, where's my liver? Liver. But also it rules the hips and the thighs. So if you are someone who does stretching or is involved in a yoga practice, really focusing on strengthening and opening those areas could be great over the next 30 days. So there's a million different ways we can do that. Some poses that you might be familiar with would be like a pigeon pose, or a malasana, a goddess pose, or even Anjaneyasana, I think, kind of stretches into the front of the hips and the front of the thighs. But again, there's tons of different ways we can do that, but really focusing in on those areas, I think, could help to keep us feeling nice and limber during this season. And then additionally, with the idea of Sagittarius being connected to truth and what is my personal truth, I think working with any meditation that helps to open that third eye space, that sixth chakra, or doing any type of energy work, maybe Reiki or other clearings, really giving yourself the opportunity to focus on opening and connecting with that space, because the more that we can get in tune with ourselves to hear our own intuition, inner guidance, all the wisdom that already lives within each of us, the easier it is then, I think, to go ahead and live your personal truth out in the world in the fullest possible way. So definitely working with third eye, sixth chakra is great during Sag season. Additionally, and I haven't talked about this in any other one of these, but I was looking at stones too that we can work with that help with this energy. So the 3 that I picked out for today, specifically connected with the third eye, would be lapis lazuli is one, amethyst is the second one, and purple fluorite kept coming up as well. So if you have those types of stones, great. If you don't, I'm sure they're easy to acquire. There's lots of fun stores in Denver that sell all that kind of stuff, or maybe you can borrow some from a friend. But if you're interested in working with crystals or stones, I would check out those 3 over the next month. And then upcoming events. Yes, Mercury retrograde is done today. So hopefully it was a good month in terms of reviewing and redoing all the things with the prefix RE in front of them, renegotiating, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you did find time to circle back to projects, situations, relationships that maybe had kind of fallen by the wayside, or stuff that's been on your to-do list for 1,000 years that never got done. Hopefully you did experience some of the positive benefits of that. I know, however, it was kind of a doozy for quite a few people, as it can be sometimes. But it's like anytime we feel that obstacle or that challenge, it's just presenting us with an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to move through it, right? So we're all happy that it happened, and we're all happy that it's done. So even though today is the station point, so retrograde, means that from our perspective, the planet was moving backwards. It wasn't really moving backwards, but based on the orbits, that's what it looks like in the sky. So the station point is the day where today it like literally stops moving, because it's been going backwards, backwards, backwards. Today it stops, and then starting tomorrow, it's going to begin to move forward. It's slow going in the first few days, so I would say it's probably going to take another week for us to really feel like, okay, we're out of this retrograde for sure. Yeah.
When you say it stops, is that what they call stations direct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's going to start moving direct tomorrow, but
Right.
today is stationing to go direct. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So if you're like me, today was like the longest, slowest day ever. I was like, will this day not end? And I was super excited to come to AstroTalk, but kind of like everything before that. I kept looking at the clock. It's like 1:11, 1:17. I'm like, Jesus, oh my gosh, will this never end? But yeah, so that is done today, which is exciting. Another really cool thing that's happening this week, and I don't have a ton to say on the subject, but you can definitely Google and find out more. So the galactic center, which is literally, our galaxy, the Milky Way, Earth is, and our solar system is kind of on like a weird arm of the whole galaxy spiral. So the center of that galaxy, though, if you were to look from Earth's perspective, where is the center of the galaxy? It's at 27 degrees of the sign of Sagittarius, which is super cool. So the reason I bring this up is because Jupiter is moving through Sagittarius right now, and this week specifically, it's going to hit 26, 27, 28 degrees of Sag. And so whenever planets align right over that galactic center point, it's supposed to be an awesome time to kind of receive insights, cosmic, downloads, pay close attention to your dreams. You might get little bits and pieces of information there. In the research I was doing about it too, a lot of people kept recommending Kundalini Yoga as a great thing to be practicing over the next week. It's not something that's part of my personal practice, but I was like, I think I might have to find a class, because I think just the movement of energy and prana that Kundalini can unleash within you can also kind of aid in that connection with something cosmic larger than ourselves. So definitely Google that to find out more if you're interested about it, but I know that is happening for sure over like the course of the next 5 or 6 days here. And then additionally, something really cool that's happening, it's not happening until December 2nd or 3rd, but it's happening during Sagittarius season, is Jupiter is finishing its year-long foray through the sign of Sagittarius, and it's going to be entering the sign of Capricorn for a whole year, till the end of December 2020. So since Jupiter moves slowly and it takes a full year to go through a sign, these can represent kind of bigger shifts in energy. So as Jupiter moves into Capricorn, this is a really great time to put a lot of our energy into work projects. What are the things we want to build? Knowing that because the sign of Capricorn, is involved, it's something where we want to lay a really solid foundation. We want to do a lot of planning and a lot of step-by-step work to help us reach whatever it is that we want to achieve. So it's definitely about bringing more optimism. Jupiter expands everything. So more optimism, more expansion into our work projects. Bringing those visions to life with our hard work, knowing that if we put our nose to the grindstone, we can make anything happen. It's also the idea that, Jupiter can be about what brings us joy. And so the sign of Capricorn really is about like work and goals and all that kind of stuff. So it's like over the next year, we might find that we derive a little bit more enjoyment from going after our goals, feeling like we check things off the list, really building and creating in a sense.
Is that type of thing like it's not your sun sign thing?
No, so that's kind of for everyone. Everyone feels that energy where Jupiter's moving. Now it'll move through, your chart is a circle with like the 12 pie slices. So it'll move through a specific pie slice of yours. And so that can give you a little bit more insight into like where should you focus on expansion in terms of life activities. But everyone will kind of feel the subtle shift of Jupiter into Capricorn, even if it's not your sun sign or whatever.
Is that where you're seeing Jupiter in your birth chart? Or is that maybe just anywhere?
So it's where Jupiter is in the sky right now.
Okay.
So if it's every
So
every 12 to 13 years, it'll return to its where it is in your birth chart.
So
Yeah,
it'll be where Capricorn is in your birth chart.
exactly.
Cool.
What house Capricorn rules. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Same thing I was just explaining to you. Like the pie
Oh,
slice
okay.
where you have Capricorn in your chart is different than the pie slice where I have Capricorn in mine. So Jupiter will be
Right.
touching a different area of my life than it will of your life. However, kind of these larger themes will apply to everyone, if that makes sense. Good questions, guys. One other thing to note too is that this isn't necessarily just during Sagittarius season, but Capricorn is the sign right after Sag. So this happens on December 21st, 22nd, right before that Christmas time, we move into Capricorn season. And when that happens, we're actually going to have a large number of planets in Capricorn. The Sun will move in there. Jupiter's moving in December 3rd. Saturn and Pluto are already in there. Venus is in there right now. So it's interesting, these ideas of like maturity, responsibility, dependability, hard work, all those themes are really going to be emphasized as we end 2019 and as we roll into 2020. So that's kind of an aside, but just something to note. Also too, you know, with Jupiter connecting to that idea of personal truth, when it rolls into Capricorn, it's about, you know, seeking our personal truth so that we can put it into action out in the world and build something useful for ourselves and for others with it. Kind of, you know, when it rolls through Sag, it's about what is my truth and exploring and going to the edges of what that looks like. And then as it rolls into Capricorn, it's like, okay, now that we know that, let's do something practical with it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Awesome. So those are kind of the three big things that are coming up to note. And now we come to the end with our moons. So the new moon is actually quite soon. The new moon is next Tuesday, November 26th. It's going to peak around 8 a.m. in the morning, so kind of Monday night into Tuesday, early morning. And it's going to happen at 4 degrees of Sagittarius. So the reason I tell you that is if you've seen your chart and you know what pie slice you have Sagittarius in, that can show you more specifically where you want to be setting intentions, because new moons are always about planting seeds that we want to kind of help to grow, whether that's something we want to grow over a month's time, over 6 months time till the corresponding full moon, or over a full year until the very next Sagittarius new moon. That would be up to you guys in terms of the length of your intentions. But if you know where 4 degrees of Sag is in your chart, or you want to hang back after, we can take a look at that for sure. But kind of generally speaking, we have some really interesting things happening in the sky at the same time that this new moon is happening. So, and they might be a little erratic. So it could be a really cool time where an opportunity might just show up out of the blue. It definitely could be something sudden, but it also could be a really big release of energy. So I want you to just be aware next Tuesday, especially if you are traveling to be with family or anything along those lines. You know, just know that you feel some strong energies coming up. Just breathe through it. Don't make any sudden moves. You know, with the energy that's happening around the moon, we might be inclined to do something really sudden and really liberating, but also know that might come with a dose of like tension and friction as well. So again, you know, be true to yourself. That's the whole theme of Sagittarius. Do what you have to do, but maybe figuring out how we can do what we have to do in a way that minimizes the casualties, so to speak. Okay. One thing that a astrologer that I really like, her name's Pam Gregory. She has some great YouTube videos twice a month. One thing she said in her video about the new moon in Sagittarius was set intentions for new ways to do old things. I thought that was really nice. I liked the way she said that, so that would be a good thing to focus on here. Also, I wrote, you know, setting intentions for, you know, breaking away from situations that have become stagnant, maybe setting an intention for making a type of, quote, radical change, whatever that might mean for you. But just knowing that, you know, the change might not have to take place right exactly at the new moon, but maybe it's setting the intention for that to happen at a later point in time just kind of taking a look at, Sagittarius doesn't like anything to get too stagnant or too boring. They love to be stimulated and be out in the world and such. So kind of thinking about what that looks like for you. And then additionally, Uranus is involved in a lot of what's going on with this new moon. So just recognize that if you do feel like some anxiety or some nervous tension next week, it's okay. My favorite mantra with anything astrologically related, is this too shall pass. Nothing is permanent. So just know that if those feelings come up, just don't resist them. That's been a big theme. If you've been to any of my classes this week, we've been talking a lot about resistance. So just like allowing yourself to flow with whatever life is bringing you, even if it looks like complete shit, you're just like, okay, let's do it, So trying to find a little bit more ease, a little bit more flow will kind of help to make sure that we don't experience too much of the anxiety around the new moon. But yes, good time to set intentions, Monday night into Tuesday, yes? So that's the new moon in Sagittarius. And now later in the month, if the new moon is in one sign, the full moon is always in the opposite sign. So the full moon will be in the sign of Gemini. So I know we have, one Gemini here at least, and maybe some other Gemini in the charts. So that full moon is going to take place on Wednesday, December 11th. But it's going to be late at night, 10 p.m. So kind of the 11th into December 12th, we'll definitely be feeling that. And, Gemini moon to me, even when it's not our newer full moon, Gemini moon has this very frenetic quality to it, I think, and it makes me super restless. I'm like, I want to do something with my hands, but I can't focus, and I'm interested in a lot of different things. It's very hard for me to sit at work anytime the moon is in Gemini. It's like I'm home and I'm on the phone and I'm vacuuming. I feel like I should have a cigarette hanging out of my mouth. So because full moon has an extra jolt of energy with it no matter what, just know that come mid-December, we might be feeling all kinds of ways. Move your body. That's what I'm going to suggest. If you feel anything kind of crazy building in yourself leading up to that full moon, make sure you're exercising, make sure you're getting on your yoga mat, whatever it is that works for you. And it's interesting. We've got some Venus-Saturn stuff happening with this full moon. So, the full moon typically is about celebration and culmination of things. However, that Venus-Saturn combo that we have going on can be about money. So I want you to be careful, especially because we'll be in the throes of the holiday season. Just be really mindful of what you are spending your money on, how much money you are spending. Try to keep yourself on a budget, even though Sagittarius is budget, what? But, try to use that Capricorn energy that Jupiter's going to go into to rein it in a little bit. Just making sure that with that Sag tendency to go overboard, that we aren't doing that in a financial sense and then putting ourselves in a hole come January. When we're in Capricorn season, then we're going to be like, we're so disappointed in ourselves. Why did we do that? But yeah, issues coming up around money, potentially responsibility with money. Also, I think interestingly, it can be a time where at the full moon, a lot of times we have a lot of feelings coming up. And especially with a Gemini moon, it's we want to communicate those feelings. We want to talk about all of them. But the angle that Venus and Saturn are making to the moon could make it a little bit tougher. So it might be where around the full moon, you have things you want to say, there's things you want to express, but that particular day might not be the best one to do it. Give yourself a little bit of space, and I think a couple days later when the moon is in Cancer, that could be a good time to circle back to here's really how I feel. Let me tell you all about it type of thing.
Write them all down.
Yeah, exactly. I think writing it down would be a great way to do that, because I think it'll just, you might feel like there's some sort of block to you fully communicating yourself at that time. But additionally, there is a really cool thing happening at the full moon too, though. Mars and Neptune are making this very harmonic, beautiful aspect. It's called a trine, in case you're familiar with astrology, which could show that I think it was 2 talks ago, we had a super creative full moon, and I think because of this Mars Neptune, this could be another opportunity for really digging deep into our personal creativity at this moon time and letting that shine. This is also a great time with Mars and Neptune together to put your energy into some type of spiritual release, spiritual practice, helping you to kind of, I don't want to use the word transcend, that sounds a little much, but get more in tune with your spirituality, and that could be a great thing to celebrate at the time of the full moon, is your own personal connection. And then again, diving into our creativity, I think, to help us move through any issues that we might be struggling with. If anything comes up, how can you be a creative problem solver in your personal life, in your work, wherever something might need your attention. I think that's a great way to focus that energy of the full moon as well. Trying to be a little more creative, a little more in tune with yourself, so that therefore you can be a little more in tune with others as well. So, I'm gonna stop this for just a second.